Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Tonight, we're going to be talking about divorce. You know, COVID-19, people have talked that either people are getting pregnant or they're getting divorced. So it seems to be one or the other. And I want to introduce you to two ladies that I've become friendly with over the course of the last little while. And they're, I think, experts in this area. Leanne Townsend, who runs a family law firm that specializes in divorce and family law issues, and Jennifer Barkin, who is a mediator and an arbitrator and works in helping people through divorce, not going necessarily through the court system, which is probably helpful at times. And they're together launching a new business, a new podcast called, I think it's Divorcing Well. Is that correct?
No, Divorcing Well is my current podcast. So we're launching a YouTube show called The Dish on Divorce. The Dish on Divorce.
I apologize. And that's going to be launching when?
It's going to be launching in the next couple of weeks. And we're ultimately going to be recording it in a studio. But until the lockdown kind of ends, we're going to, do it this way, which has become the norm for so many of these things.
So let's go through some of the issues in a minute. And I think a big accolade to you, Leanne. I guess Divorcing Well was your old podcast, and I understand you got 10,000 downloads. Congratulations for that.
Yes, thank you. And it is my old podcast, but I'm still doing it. So it's still going to be around, and I'm still going to be, keeping it going for, as long as can be. But yeah, I was really excited. That's kind of a landmark or a monumental, mark to get the 10,000.
It sure is monumental. There's no question. That's fantastic. Congratulations. So Leanne Townsend, tell us a little bit about what it is you do. You're a family law lawyer, correct?
Correct. I'm a family law lawyer, and I'm a partner at the law firm Brody Thorning LLP, which is in downtown Toronto. I practice exclusively in the area of family law, and I have a particular background in domestic violence because I was a Crown prosecutor for many years. So I deal with a lot of cases that are high conflict involving domestic abuse or domestic violence.
And Jennifer Barkin, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hi, so Brian, I'm a mediator, family mediator in private practice. My company is called Family Matters Mediators and Counselors. I'm also a part-time roster mediator for 393 Mediate. And these days, in addition to mediation, I find that COVID has made a lot of marital breakdown very contentious. So I'm doing a lot of voice of the child reports and reintegration therapy, and some Section 30 as well, which are custody and access assessments.
Sounds like the two of you are quite busy and interested into a lot of interesting things. We're going to take a break for some message time and come back more with Leanne Townsend and Jennifer Barkin and their new podcast in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight about divorce. And we've got Jennifer Barkin, who is a mediator, and Leanne Townsend, who's a family law lawyer. And the two of them together are, in the next few weeks, launching a new combined show on divorce. And Jennifer, what's the new show going to be called? The Dish on Divorce.
On Divorce. we just officially named it yesterday. So
what a great name! I think it's a fantastic thing.
Can we retake that part?
No, that's so funny. That's great. That's wonderful.
No, you're not. I look so stupid. But the background is we went through about 100 names going back and forth, and I've had a long day. So can we redo that, please?
Well, welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Leanne Townsend and Jennifer Barkin about divorce. Leanne Townsend is a family law lawyer, and Jennifer Barkin is a mediator. And she talked about a whole bunch of different interesting things that she's forced to do from a mediation standpoint. Now, we'll come back and chat about that a little bit later. But the two of them together are launching a new show that I thought was kind of interesting and intriguing. And its name is, Jennifer, going to be what?
The Dish on Divorce.
The Dish on Divorce. What a great name. That's fantastic. I think that's interesting. And Leanne, I reached out to you a little while ago because I saw a post that you made that you had 10,000 downloads on your old podcast called Divorcing Well. That's a
Yeah.
huge number.
Yeah, I was really excited by it because I don't know, maybe I should pay more attention to the numbers than I do. I just kind of enjoy doing it. I enjoy chatting with my guests each week, and I put out the content, and I've had positive feedback, and I always hope people enjoy it. But I'm not one for tracking the numbers all the time, so I was really excited when I found that out.
What were some of the most interesting, most downloaded topics?
Well, one topic that's always, always popular is anything to do with divorcing a narcissist. So I have a couple of episodes where I had one where it was a woman who had actually been in a relationship with one and sort of giving her story. And I had one where we were talking about co-parenting with one. And I just find anything with the word narcissist in it is usually very, very popular. Because it's sort of everyone nowadays thinks they're divorcing one. Some are, some aren't. But
Yeah, it's a word that I never heard about before, and now everyone's throwing it around. Tell us, what is a narcissist?
Well, there's narcissistic personality disorder, which is, probably the most extreme form of it, where, but the traits are that it's someone who's very selfish, self-absorbed. They can be very, very charming, but, and they kind of lure people in with a lot of attention and charisma. But then once they've lured someone into the relationship, they're actually quite emotionally abusive in that they have to feel like they're the star, they're on a pedestal, and they put the other person down. And they're always right. And, some of there's, as I said, there's varying levels of it, but the more extreme levels, it's like they have to be idolized all the time and put on a pedestal and can do no wrong. And the other person is always wrong. The other person is inferior. And it is a form of abuse. But I do think the term, unfortunately, is overused.
Are narcissists always males?
No, they can be females as well. I think that I've seen it in both, and I have clients who have exes who are both male and female. So it's something that is common in both sexes.
And why would it be so much more challenging divorcing a narcissist than anyone else?
Because the whole adversarial process, which is, what divorce is a type of environment that they thrive in. They love to be adversarial. They love to win. They love to feel like they're winning, you're losing, and they love to fight. So, when you put them in a divorce situation with someone who they feel that they're already superior to, it really energizes them to have high conflict and to fight.
Now, you told me in one of our previous conversations that you don't like going to court, that you want people to settle, and I guess use services like Jennifer's and mediation. Is that a topic that you've had on one of your podcasts?
It is. I've actually, Jennifer has been a guest on my podcast a couple of times, and I have a new podcast coming out in the next few weeks with her, where we talked about Section 30 custody assessments and Voice of the Child reports. But Jennifer did do a podcast on that topic, Voice of the Child reports, as well as co-parenting with a disabled child, which is really challenging.
What's Voice of a Child report, Jennifer?
So nowadays, the Hague Treaty says that children should have a right to have a say in matters that concern them. So they have a right to have their needs, their wants, their wishes heard. So Voice of the Child report, it's an ADR process that stands for Alternative Dispute Resolution, where parents and children have to be on board to have a therapist interview the children to speak about their wishes on what they want their lives to look like moving forward once their parents are separated. So often the parents, two types of parents will get this report. The first, when the parents really can't decide between them what they want to do. One parent says, I want 50%. The other person says, I want 70%. And they can't see eye to eye. And you never want to ask your children what they want. That's dragging kids into conflict. So a Voice of the Child report is an non-adversarial way of having a trained therapist trained to interview children, find out the children's wants and wishes. But ultimately, all that's brought back to the parents is what the children allow the therapist to bring back. So kids can change their mind at any point until that report is written. And then the other parents that will get the report are parents that may be getting along, but they really want to know what their kids would like to see happen. And they know it's not a good idea to bring the kids into their conflict. So they have the voice of the child conducted.
And when you do this voice of the child, you're out completely separate from the parents interviewing the children and asking them what's important to them?
There's a process. I have a training in the process. There's a specific training that people can do. So firstly, I would meet with both parents separately. I want to learn from their point of view what their children are like. I have to develop rapport with the kids. I want to know, what they're hoping to see happen as well, and what their assumptions are or what they believe to be true. So when I go in interviewing the children, which is generally 2 times with each child, might be more sessions, but generally 2 is the number. And I get an idea of how to build rapport with the children, because I've learned a little about what they like from the parents, whether it's a video game or a kind of doll, whatever it may be. And you have to develop that rapport before you start asking the kids all the questions. And the questions are so open-ended, but the trick is whatever you ask of the child about one of their parents, you have to word it exactly the same for the other parent, right? So I can't say, what are your 3 favorite things about hanging out when you hang out with your dad? And the child will say whatever they are. Then I'd have to ask that same question. So what are your 3 favorite things when you're with your mom? In that way.
It's fascinating. Leanne, what are some of the other topics that you've had in your successful podcast?
Another topic that's quite successful is when I have people on to tell their story. So I've had, a number of people, men and women, who have gone through a divorce, sometimes recently, sometimes a while ago, and they come on and share their story, the challenges they face, what wisdom they'd like to share with listeners. And I find those ones are often very popular as well because they're so relatable.
So these are where people are actually telling the story of their divorce. That's got to be pretty personal.
It is. And I have to give people credit for being willing to be vulnerable and, to share that, because, not everyone is. And as I say, I think it's really helpful for listeners. I've always had good feedback on those ones because people can relate to it. And
are they scary stories or encouraging stories?
I always want them to be inspiring at the end. I mean, some parts of them can be scary. I've had people who've been terribly abused in their relationships on the show, but the whole point of having them share is to have it with a positive, inspiring note that yes, they went through that. It was hard, but they're in a much better place now and life gets better.
Must be very tough being a lawyer or a mediator dealing with someone that's been abused in a prior relationship.
It is. It's very hard. I know Jennifer and I both deal with this, and it's, when I was a Crown attorney as well, I dealt with it a lot. And you have to recognize, that they're not able to advocate for themselves, and you really have to be protective of them and make sure that they're not being pressured into agreeing with things. And I know, Jennifer has certain protocols she has to follow when people come see her with that situation.
Yeah. If you're a family mediator, if you're an accredited family mediator, we are required to do training in domestic violence, but not just through our schooling. We have to do the training every 2 years again. I think it's a minimum of 10 hours every 2 years, because part of what we have to do is keep people safe, right? Like Leanne said, you don't want people to throw in the towel and give in because they're afraid, or, they're afraid what's going to happen. But you also want to make sure that people have a voice to speak up for themselves. I want to make sure that people, let's say if it's not COVID, are safe, that they're not going to get beaten up in a parking lot. So I might mediate and never have people together in the same room.
Can you mediate and not be in the same room?
Well, you can do staggered arrivals and departures for one. I can have people on different floors in different offices of buildings. If there's any domestic violence, and especially if it's in the recent years, not a one-time incident that was maybe 15 years ago or such, you have to keep people safe, and it might be really inappropriate to have people together.
And sometimes if they're on charges, they can't be together because sometimes if someone's on bail conditions, they're not allowed to be in the same room or in the presence of the spouse. So you have to keep them separate.
And I've heard that domestic violence is up substantially during this last year because of COVID-19 and people being stuck together. That said, I actually had another female family law lawyer on my show that said that false allegations of abuse are up as well. Have you heard that?
I hadn't heard that. I mean, I'm aware that definitely domestic violence is up, but divorces are up. People are fighting more about everything. So it wouldn't surprise me if false allegations are up, because that's a surefire way to get your spouse out of the house. If you make a false allegation or true or false allegation, they'll be removed. So if you're in a lockdown and you really want to get them out, I could see that there could be a rise in false allegations.
I'm seeing a lot of retaliation. So false allegations, because they know that children's aid is going to be called, and they're angry because they're stuck in the same house still, and they figure it's going to speed up process, but also it's out of spite and anger.
Can separated people stay in the same house for a long period of time?
They do. I don't know if you ever saw the movie The War of the Roses, Brian. It's an old one, but Kathleen Turner and I think it was Michael Douglas, and they were staying in that matrimonial home till the bitter end. And people do. They're separated, but they don't want to leave the home. Often it's because there's children, and they're concerned if they leave the home, they could have a disadvantage with respect to the parenting schedule or custody and access. So they stay, and it can be very stressful and very high conflict and not good for the children. But it's quite common.
So I thought separation was when you started living apart. When is a separation a separation?
I'll let you answer that, Jennifer.
Okay, so the date of separation is important, the date, because there has a significance to the date in the family law. However, when we're mediating date of separation, if people don't decide what date of separation is, all that really matters is that the two people agree on this date, because it can be the day that somebody moved out of the bedroom. It might be the day somebody moved out of the house. It might be a date we pull out of the hat. But when you're looking at the marital finances, you're taking the day of marriage to the day of separation, and it's the window of those two dates for equalization. So that's really the significance of that date of separation.
Yeah, everything gets valued on the separation date. So it's a very important date, and sometimes people use it to try and gain a financial advantage.
So I've heard that it's when marital relations stop. Is that sort of the definitive date of separation?
No, you'd be surprised, Brian, the number of people who come see me, and when I'm trying to figure out the date of separation, and one of the things I have to ask them, is when did you stop, being intimate with each other? And the number of people who say 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I'm shocked by the number of people who are in marriages, and that's the situation for years and years. So that's only one part of it. It's certainly not the definitive part of it.
What if people separate out financial situations from each other?
No, if they're married, it doesn't, again, looking at the date of separation is a number of factors. So it could be that they're not sharing a bedroom. It could be that they're living separate lives. It could, usually it's all of these things that you're looking at globally. It's not usually like moving out is the clearest, definition, but there's lots of other definitions.
And it's a negotiation because there's no definitive one?
Definitely. I don't know if you want to elaborate, Jennifer, but definitely it can be a gray date.
Yeah, I had a couple recently, and it's so contentious, and they cannot agree on a date of separation. He wants to pick her birthday just to be mean. So, really, and I'm a mediator, and I'm trying to get people to get along. And I'm like, there's kids, and you don't like them right now, but you're not going to be in this place forever. Hopefully, when your kids grow and there's a graduation, I would think that you'd want to be able to attend the graduation and at least be in the same room. So rather than, worry about the stuff that you really need to worry about, but don't go out of your way to be mean to one another.
So don't ask for a divorce on a birthday.
Well, it's not the nicest thing to do.
What about your
Especially if
anniversary?
you weren't the one who asked for the divorce, right? So you're already hurting. You're already at a different spot emotionally. And now they're throwing that at you. It's mean.
What about an anniversary?
That's not very nice either.
Unbelievable. We're chatting tonight with Leanne Townsend and Jennifer Barkin. Leanne Townsend is a family law lawyer. Jennifer Barkin is a mediator, a family divorce mediator. And we're talking about primarily Leanne's podcasts, Divorcing Well, and that she got 10,000 downloads, which sounds like a lot of people are looking for a lot of information on this topic, no question. But the two of them are going to be launching a new show just in a few weeks, which I think will be interesting, called The Dish on Divorce. And so that's going to be fun. Is the website going to be thedishondivorce.ca or something like that?
We haven't even talked about the website yet. We're just going to get the show launched and go from there.
Well, if it gets another 10,000 downloads, it's going to be a great show. There's no question. We're going to take a break and come back more with Leanne and Jennifer in just a second. Wait for us. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight about divorce, and it may not be the most positive topic to talk about, but for some people, divorce actually is a real positive. And the fact that Leanne Townsend has had this podcast called Divorcing Well that's had 10,000 downloads, I think is probably emblematic of a lot of people who are interested in this issue or need to be interested in this issue because of what's going on in their life and want to know more. And so Leanne Townsend and Jennifer Barkin, Leanne is a family law lawyer and Jennifer is a mediator, have gotten together and are going to be launching a new show called The Dish on Divorce, right? Is that right, Jennifer? The Dish on Divorce?
That's right. Took a while to get the name. We were throwing names back and forth for a few weeks, and some were going, no, we can't do that. It's the men aren't going to like it, or it sounds ditzy, or for whatever. But somebody actually gave us this name because Leanne put a poll on social media, and someone came up, and we both liked it.
And so, what is The Dish on Divorce going to be talking about? Is it going to be just a continuation of the prior podcast that you were doing, Leanne, or how's it going to be different?
It's going to be different because it's going to also have a more sort of fun, light side. My current podcast, Divorcing Well, I interview experts and people who've gone through divorce, and we talk about some pretty serious issues. And, I try to make it inspiring, but it's serious stuff. Whereas our idea with The Dish is that we're going to have some of that because, let's face it, divorce, it is a serious topic, but we also want to have some lighter, fun topics like celebrity divorces and our take on that, or something that's in the news, or something to do with, we use divorce fashion. If you're going through a divorce, you can still be fashionable.
What is divorce fashion? This is what you wear when you go to court or something?
No. So sometimes when people are in long relationships, not everybody, I'm not going to make that assumption, but often people get a little bit lazy, whether it's with their weight, whether their hair, and divorce really beats the you-know-what out of people, right? So people are feeling like that. So divorce fashion is a way of changing your hair, changing your makeup, changing your clothes, right? Not wearing those mom baggy jeans anymore. And for men too. And how to feel good, because when you feel good, you present a more positive outlook, right? You appear friendlier. People want to get to know you rather than when you don't feel good about yourself and you're sort of like huddled like this. So divorce fashion is, so how do you get from here and feeling pretty terrific again?
I've actually spoken to a couple different people that have gone through bad divorces, and frankly, when they were, not expecting it, and someone told them, but it was a metamorphosis. It was an opportunity for them to find a new passion, a new career, a new entrepreneurial venture, write a book, something like that. I've been enthused by how many people actually found divorce to be an incredibly positive part of their life.
It can be. And it's funny because I say that to clients. I say, like, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, but then it will get better and it'll get much better. And it really is an opportunity for a lot of people to rediscover themselves and find out who they truly are, because so often in bad marriages, we often end up compromising a lot, and you end up kind of moving away from some of the things you truly want to do or the person you truly want to be. So it is an opportunity for a lot of people to really bloom and become who they were always meant to be.
Sometimes most of the marriages, even when they break up, they're not necessarily bad marriages. Sometimes what happens, I like to refer to them almost as seasons. You can go through different seasons with friends. A marriage can have different seasons. Let's say if people got married very young and, they sort of went status quo, this is what you do, and then you have children, then they spend those years so busy raising the children and trying to earn some income, and kids are growing, and all of a sudden it's the two of them again. And they've grown so far apart, their interests have changed. So it's not always a bad thing. Right? When the marriage ends, sometimes, as Leanne said, it's a chance for people to find out, well, who am I now? What am I meant to be?
I've heard of some former couples were divorced parties.
Yeah, well, I remember actually a couple of years back, Carmelia Ray, who I know she's a friend of mine. I know she's been on your podcast. She threw Toronto's first elite divorce party, because I was a speaker at it, and it was amazing the number of people who came out to that. And it is something people do. They have divorce parties. I don't know if I was gonna say, I don't know if I advocate for that, but if it makes you feel good, and why not?
And this
My
is
only issue with the divorce party is if you have children, I don't think it's nice for the children to see. But if it's a marriage that didn't have children, for example, so, their children aren't going to know about it. I do believe that co-parents, as I call them, should be respectful to one another. And that's not very nice, because in divorce, people aren't on the same page. One person's left, one person might be a little blindsided. So I think just out of respect for your former partner, it's not a nice thing to do. But if it's one of those, starter marriages, short-term marriages, no kids involved, why not?
Now, Jennifer, you're a mediator, and Leanne, I understand that you counsel people not to go to court, or try not to go to court. Tell us a little bit about the go to court versus not go to court decision-making process, if you could. Is it just based on expense? And
no, it's based on a lot of factors. Mediation is great for people who can, have some sense of reasonableness and who want to work together to come to an agreement. And it is cheaper, it can be faster, but there's some people who they're not going to budge from their position. And like to put them into mediation, they're not going to budge. So it doesn't really, it just ends up being a waste of time and money to go that route. Sometimes there's situations too where there is abuse and mediation isn't appropriate. It's more appropriate that person have an advocate. And even with mediation, there's lawyer assisted mediation, and there's where the lawyers go with their clients to the mediation and can still be an advocate for them at the mediation. And then there's mediation where the lawyers don't go, and it's purely just the clients that Jennifer would work with.
And Jennifer, how do you pitch mediation versus the option to go to Leanne and go all the way through court?
Okay, I'm not going to use the word pitch, because I always feel like an ambulance chaser with pitching.
Sorry.
Or if somebody,
Explain.
It's okay. Or if somebody says to me, well, why don't you call this person? I always answer, because they call me. I don't just randomly call people. But one thing that's great in mediation is, other than the negotiation of child support, because child support is considered the rights of the children, not mom's right, not dad's right. It's a non-negotiable. Anything else can be negotiated, right? So if I start in the law, let's say matrimonial law, and I'm just speaking under the umbrella of the law, not as a lawyer, we know it's a 50-50. You split your assets. In mediation, you can say, you know what, I want to keep my pension. That's very important to me. And a mediator can work with, okay, so let's see the evaluation of the pension. You let the other side know it's this much money. Are you willing to walk from that? Are you willing to give up something from your side of the financial statement? So there's a lot of room to, make things pretty creative. And when it comes to,
I have to add that's not unique to a mediator. Lawyers can still do that as well.
It's true. Negotiation. Yeah.
Okay. What are some of the other topics that you guys are going to address? You talked about celebrity divorces. Why do people want to hear about celebrity divorces?
Because people are fascinated by Hollywood. People are fascinated by influencers, whether it's Instagram, whether they're in movies, magazines. They just find it really interesting. And there's some fantasy about the lifestyle too, right? Like so and so is divorcing so and getting $400 million. And, how many of these fabulous beach homes are they going to get? There's
Yeah,
something shiny about it.
And so what you're gonna sort of analyze their divorce proceeding or something like this, and who got what and how much money?
I think we'll sort of
Maybe.
chat about it, and maybe I might give what would happen if it happened here in Ontario, because these celebrity divorces very rarely are they here in Ontario, so they might be treated differently. But so there'll be a little bit of that, but also just I think chatting about it. Maybe Jennifer and I'll have a different opinion on what the outcome was. Maybe if it was Jeff and Mackenzie Bezos, maybe one of us will think she shouldn't have got as much as she did, and the other might think she should have got more. I don't know.
I understand that the percentage of marriages after divorce that survive is even worse than first marriages. So the divorce statistics get worse in successive marriages. Would you recommend prenups?
I do. I think everyone should have a prenup. And I'm not just saying that because it's work for me. I think that it protects people, particularly in second marriages, or if you have children from a prior relationship, you should definitely have a prenup. But even, people starting out, there's no downside to it. You do it when you're in love with each other. So no one's bringing bitter, angry emotion into it. It's a business negotiation. It shouldn't be based on any emotion. It doesn't mean somebody doesn't love the other person. It's a common sense thing to do, given the high divorce rate that we have. And it can just make things a lot easier down the road if things go wrong. And, when you don't like each other so much and you're trying to decide how things should be dealt with, it's better that you decided that when you liked each other.
What are the common parts of a prenup?
Well, support is one of them, like not child support, because you can't negotiate or you can't have a prenup that deals with anything to do with the children. So custody, access, child support, but spousal support is a big one. Often people will ask for their spouse to waive spousal support or cap it at some amount, or it doesn't kick in for a certain period of time. Division of property, if you have a situation where one person is bringing a lot more assets into the marriage, well, those would generally be protected just with the way the law is. If you bring assets in, you get an exclusion for them. But if you commingle them and there's growth on the value of the assets, that's where it gets messy. So, sometimes people want to have it that what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. And if we part ways, that's how it's going to be split. So those types of things, pensions, sometimes people want to make sure that their pension isn't going to be touched by the other party. People can be creative with it.
So supposedly, and maybe this is a little bit of your celebrity talk, but supposedly former President Donald Trump had a prenup with Marla Maples that if the marriage lasted longer than 5 years, she got like a huge amount of money, maybe $5 or $10 million. I can't remember what the number was. But if it was less than 5 years, she only got $1 million. And he kicked her out supposedly one day before the 5 year. Is that the way prenups are actually structured?
Sometimes, because if you have someone who makes a lot of money, for example, and has a lot of money, and they're marrying somebody who, makes much less or has much less, I think if you're going to marry and potentially say have kids like Donald Trump and Marla Maples did, you might want to have something that, this person isn't going to be with me just for 2 years and then be entitled to some massive amount of money. She has to stick around longer. I guess it's a way of protecting yourself from a gold digger. But in Donald Trump's case, I think what he did is not the nicest thing to end it just before he was going to owe her more money.
What's the opposite of a gold digger? Because whatever it was, he did it by leaving a day before the 5-year anniversary, and her settlement went up so much.
Yeah, he wants a sugar mama.
I don't know. Donald Trump is a jerk.
There's a lot of rumors that his current wife has a prenup, but we won't go into that unless you guys know it. So what other topics are you going to be talking about? We're going to talk about fashion for divorce. What about dating after divorce? Is that an issue you're going to address?
Definitely.
What's it like dating after divorce?
Well, a lot of
Scary.
people, it is scary. I was gonna say it depends on the person, I think. A lot of people who were married a long time. I know myself personally, when I got divorced, had been with someone for a very long time. So it was scary to go out there, and dating had changed. There wasn't online dating when I dated before. So I think, for a lot of people, it can be very challenging and nerve-wracking. And for other, and it can be fun. And some people just go right to the fun part. They're not, they don't find it nerve-wracking. It can be validating to their ego if they were in an unhappy marriage and they didn't feel like their spouse found them attractive. And, for a lot of people, knowing that there's 10,000 people on Plenty of Fish who find them attractive, that's good for their ego.
Are there rules in talking about the past marriage or the divorce that you're going through or you did go through? Isn't there some rule about if you on the date talk too much about the past, you haven't got over it yet?
I don't know if it's that you haven't gotten over it yet, but it's not really fair to your date, especially if it's the first date, the second date. If you're dating somebody for a while, that's when you start to unpack. And what I mean by we all come with our stuff, right? But you don't want to unload your whole story on somebody on a first date. A first date should be friendly and let's get to know each other. What are your interests? What do you like to do? Not all about, and the arguments that you had and how he or she's trying to take me for all my money. That's not first date stuff or second date stuff.
Especially if you want to get a second date.
Like nobody wants to sit there and listen to this whole sob story on, first few dates.
Are there suggestions or rules on how soon after a divorce you can start dating again or get married again or anything like that?
Well, you can only get married again if you're divorced. And in order to get divorced, you have to have lived separate and apart for a year. So that would be the rule on marrying again. But, dating again, I don't know what Jennifer's thought is, but I know people ask me that. And I always say it depends on how you've healed, because people heal at different rates. Some people heal very quickly and they're ready to date, and other people take 10 years to heal from, a bad relationship. So I think it depends on how long you were married, how hurt or traumatized or, whatever you were from the marriage, and how much work you've done to heal it so that you can be ready to be in a relationship again.
There's a saying that goes that if you do not heal what cut you, you're going to bleed on those that didn't.
If you don't heal
what cut you,
you're going to bleed on
those that didn't, which is very true.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any timeline though when it's okay to date. I actually had a little argument with somebody yesterday. Some woman was chastising some man, that he was ready to date and wanted to meet people. And she's like, "You've only been separated from your wife for 6 months." It's like, well, what? You're the morality police here? So my answer is always the same, that we all go through different stories. You don't know other people's stories and what went on. Maybe there was no intimacy in that person's relationship for 12 years. Maybe they were abused. Maybe they were belittled. I don't know. So to put a number on, okay, 3 months, it's okay right now. You can't say that, right?
Yeah, but it's not, what I've heard, it's not necessarily a morality issue. It's a you're over it issue. And so some males or some females have a rule they won't date someone that hasn't been separated or divorced for a certain length of time because they're worried that they're not over it yet.
I think like Leanne said, the healing that people go through happens at different times. And some people, are more resilient, let's say, or there wasn't as much to heal from, and they're okay. And they're pretty sure they know what their needs, their wants, what's negotiable, what's non-negotiable. And other people really have no idea, and they're still grieving the loss of the marriage. I don't think there's a timeline.
Chatting tonight with Leanne Townsend and Jennifer Barkin about divorce and a new show that they're going to be launching called The Dish on Divorce. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to our divorce show on the Brian Crombie Radio Wire on Saga 960. I come to you every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock. And tonight's show, we're chatting with Leanne Townsend. She's a family law lawyer, and Jennifer Barkin, who is a mediator in divorce. And, ladies, it's interesting that, you're both in this divorce business. Is it challenging being a female in the divorce business? So much of the law business used to be an old boys club, and a lot of the judges I see are still male. What's it like for the two of you in what used to be a male-dominated world, but I guess it's changing quite dramatically?
It's definitely changing because, law schools are pumping out, sometimes more than 50% of the class these days are female. And so there's lots more female lawyers, female judges. It's definitely changing. There's still, I think, a little bit of the old boys thing. There's still a little bit in some of the law firms with maybe more male partners. And I find what is a little bit unique for me is I find when I have a client whose ex-husband is self-representing, and he's been abusive to her, I find he often directs a lot of the abuse at me. And it can be, I've been in relationships where I've been, mistreated and whatnot. And so sometimes it can actually be triggering a little bit for me when this male is acting in, what's an abusive way towards me.
You're saying the prior husband is abusing you almost.
Yeah, that's
really?
What ends up happening. And I have to protect her. So it's like I have to put up with the abuse, but it's like they hate you even more because you're a lawyer. So they want to feel like they can one up you that, you've got your fancy degree, but I'm smarter than you. And, I had one recently where in his email, he referred to it, we were talking about something and he refers to it as Mrs. Townsend's chalet, suggesting that I'm just bilking them for money and using the money to buy chalet. So, which Jennifer quickly pointed out, I should buy a beach house, not a chalet.
We
Jennifer,
don't like cold. So this was new to me that Leanne would have had a chalet. Like, what? She doesn't like cold. I don't like cold. Like, you need Jennifer, a beach house.
Jennifer, you were saying that clothing had changed. What do you mean by that?
So much. Like when I think of years ago when, let's say, I went to school and my professors and teachers would say, well, if you want to be in this field, you're going to have to cut that hair and you're going to have to dress a little more conservatively. So I find I have a little more leeway now where I can be true to me that wouldn't have been like that, even 15 years ago.
Sounds like that movie Legally Blonde.
Pretty much, which we wanted to actually.
That.
Yeah, we did. That was one of the names.
If anyone is interested in hiring you, Leanne, or contacting you, what do they have to do?
They can visit my website at www.leannetownsend.ca or visit my firm website, which is www.btlegal.ca, and all my contact information is in both places.
And Jennifer, what about you? How does someone contact you if they want you to help them with a mediation or a parental, what's it called?
Parenting coordination?
Yes.
Voice of the Child report?
Voice of the Child report or parental coordination.
So my company again is Family Matters Mediators and Counselors, and my website, there's two addresses, but I'm going to give you the easy one, which is www.torontofamilymediation.ca. And like Leanne's, all my contact information is there.
And the dish on divorce is going to be out in a couple of weeks. And what's that going to be on Facebook and Instagram and a website, or all the above?
All of the above.
We look forward to watching it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, last question. Given your experience, you've probably seen a whole bunch of people that have got divorced. When you meet a couple, just in regular life or, in your business, can you tell whether they're going to work out or not?
I think so. I mean, you can never be 100% correct, but when you see a couple where there isn't that mutual respect, there isn't the communication the way it should be. And I'm a big believer in the language of love. I don't read the book, and I think when people have different love languages and they don't understand that can also, be very, very problematic.
What about you, Jennifer?
For me, communication, I can always tell by the communication style. When people, even as easy as if you go with another couple to a restaurant and somebody doesn't like their food and the way that they bicker with one another, right? And sometimes there's attacks, like little undermined attacks, and silent treatment and not speaking to him or her for the rest of the night. When you see the silent treatment, these people clearly can't communicate. Or somebody says, it's not that good, I don't like this so much, and that person jumps and, there's a fight. So whenever all these like little things and they really just can't talk and listen to one another, I'm like, this is going south fast.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining me tonight and talking about the dish on divorce, and good luck with your new show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
That's our show for tonight, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Good night.